Georgia.
It is 2010 and I'm here with Reverend Kathryn Yates to interview her in honor of her 90th birthday. So tell us about your life in Wrench, Georgia. How did your parents meet and how old were they when they became married?
They met after World War I when my father came home from the war. And they married, got married right away because they knew each other. And my mother was 16 and my father was 26 when they were married.
When did your mother acquire the nickname Big Mom?
Later on, when my oldest daughter, Helena, was born, she started to calling her Big Mom.
How many siblings do you have?
4. I have my brother, Willie James, my middle sister, Arlene, another middle sister, Azelma, and my baby sister, Helen.
Did Big Ma also raise your nephew, Charlie Reed?
Yes, she did. His mother died when he was 10 years of age, and there was nowhere for him to go. My parents took him in and raised him with us. He's more like a brother than a cousin.
Can you tell me what happened to your little sister and passed away? And how old was she, and how did it affect your family?
My little sister, Azelma, was 4 years of age, still 4, and she caught on fire from a great fireplace where you burn coal. It's a smaller fireplace. And she was burned to death, not right away, but she swallowed the fire and she was burned from her waist up. And she lived 1 week. And it affected us very much. My mother, I heard her say before she passed on that she was still upset about it. And it upset me very badly.
As a young lady, when were you allowed to date?
I was allowed to date around 16 years old. 16 years old.
Where did you receive your education and what was the class like?
I received my education in Wrench Junior High School. We had no kindergarten. We only had the first grade. I learned how to read when I first went to school.
Presently, you reside in a Presbyterian apartments filled with present-day amenities. Was your home heated by a fireplace?
Yes, it was.
And what kind of kitchen stove did you have?
A wood stove, a stove that burned wood.
Did your family always have a refrigerator?
No. We had an ice house. That's what they call it, ice house. You go to the ice house and get a block of ice for about 10 cents and bring it home, wrap it up in a burlap bag, a croaker sack. That's what we called it that time. It's brown. And we put it and wrap it up good, and we put it in a little pan, a big pan. And the only thing we had to do was put Helen's milk in there for it to keep fresh. Because we ate up everything else we had.
And where did you get your groceries?
We had grocery stores. The stores that exist in Wrench, Georgia, they were there then. And we went shopping. My parents went shopping every Saturday. That was the place to go shopping. And she didn't have to buy any chickens. The chicken was from the backyard. We put the chicken up before you kill him, made him clean out. And the eggs, we got the eggs from the chickens. And we lived good like that.
And did you get water from a well, and did you have indoor plumbing?
No indoor plumbing at all. We had to walk like 3 New York blocks to the well with a windmill on the top. It pumps the water. But we had to draw the water with our arms, our hands. And then we would carry that water in our hands, 2 buckets loads like that, the drinking water.
And can you tell me how you had to use a washboard to clean your clothes?
You had to rub like this. You rub like this with water and put the homemade soap on the lye soap my mother made, Opticon soap, which still exists today. And then you put the clothes in a pot, a black pot with 3 legs on it in the yard with fire on it, and boil the clothes. No bleach. And then you take them out and rinse them and hang them on the line.
Did you always have electricity?
No, I studied by lamplight. And later on, the gas lights came out, which is brighter than an electric light now. That's what we saw by gas lights. So was my church, by gas lights.
Why and when did you relocate from Georgia to the city?
1938. I had finished junior high school in Rennes, Georgia, and I went to Augusta, Georgia, because our school went no further than junior high. We had to go 2 more years in a Payne high school in Augusta. I went to Payne College High School, which still exists.
Was it a culture shock since you were a country girl?
Well, it wasn't a culture shock. After I finished high school in Augusta, Georgia, I commuted to Newark, New Jersey. And that's where the people were different. The Jews, I had never seen but one Jewish family in my life. But it didn't bother me because I was with people from my home and we all talked alike.
You have lived through a time of great transition for our country, not only World War II, but the Korean War, Vietnam, Gulf War, and currently Afghanistan and Iraq. Any comments on any of these?
World War II, I got my first factory job after my daughter was born, Helena. And I worked there 27 and a half years. I was wiring and soldering, reading the schematics and all of that for the World War II.
What was it like when you heard Dr. King and President Kennedy were killed?
It was very disturbing. President Kennedy, when they had his funeral, when he was killed, a white girl on my job at ITT told me, "Your president is dead. How do you feel?" And I told her to go to hell. And then, and I cried all day when President Kennedy's funeral was. And I did the same thing when Dr. King passed away. I cried all day long. It was very disturbing.
You were married twice, correct?
Yes.
How did you meet your first spouse? Did you have a wedding?
I didn't. I had a marriage. I met him on an Easter Sunday, and he bought me candy and cookies for an elderly lady, and he thought I was married. And the man and his wife where I lived with, they had a little spat, and the wife had left, and I said, the lady's husband's name was Wes. I said, "Wes, am I married?" He said, "I don't know who's married." And so then we let it alone. He said, "I know I'm not going up there." Then he met me at another place called Skate Land and Dance Land in Newark, New Jersey on Montgomery Street. And then that's when we really got together, and he would take me out to parties and different things like that and ice cream parlors, and that was it.
Mm-hmm. What type man was he?
He was
what kind of relationship did you have?
We had a very good relationship. He seemed like he fell for me like a brick. And we had a good relationship, and he was a very kind-hearted fellow, very regular.
When and how did he die?
He passed away. He was killed on his job on August the 27th, 1948. I was 26 years of age. And left me with 2 children, one 10 months, the other one 5 years old.
What about your second husband?
My second husband, I met him on the A train in New York City going to work in Jersey. and he fell for me right away, and we got married later, and then became so jealous-hearted until he stepped out of my life. He had to step away.
Divorce is common nowadays, but were there any stigmas associated at that time for being a widow and then a divorcee?
No, there was no stigmas at all. I stood on my own 2 feet.
Can you describe the birth of your daughters? Who was there, for instance?
I'll say God was there, because at that time the husband couldn't visit, and at the time my daughter was born, my husband was drunk. Was real drunk. He couldn't stand it. He was afraid. And okay.
Is Helena named after your sister? Helena.
Yes, she is. My sister Ella. She's named after her.
How did your daughter acquire her nickname Bobo, which still stands today over Carol?
My husband wanted a boy so bad. He thought she was going to be a boy. And she came out a girl, and he still called her Bobo.
You mentioned being pregnant another time in your life and losing that child. Do you mind talking about what happened?
Well, my husband got drunk one night, and he came in, and he hit me in my back with a shade stick, and I lost the baby.
Sorry to hear that. What makes you most proud when I mention your daughter, Helena?
She was a very kind-hearted, wonderful person, wonderful personality, very good.
What makes you most proud when I mention your daughter, Carol?
She's she's not as outgoing as Helena, but she is a solid person when it comes to rearing children. She did a wonderful job. All of her children went to college and finished.
People tend to remember the first time they're recognized as grandparents. When and how did your first grandson, Derek, pass, and how did you cope?
My Derek, passed away when he was 6 months old. And when I went there, when he was 3 months old, he wouldn't let me sleep all night. I guess he was telling me that you won't see me anymore, not on this side of the earth. And he passed away, and I came in. But when they called me from Rennes, Georgia, I was in New York City working, and I had a hamburger in my hand, and I don't know where that hamburger went yet.
When and how did your father and brother pass?
My brother had a very bad heart, and he passed away when he was 26 years of age and left a daughter, Artist Kay, and his wife, Murdis. And then my daddy passed away about 2 or 3 months after that. He couldn't stand for my brother to go and leave him. It's the only brother I had. And he passed away of, he had a stroke, and he took pneumonia in the hospital and passed away.
How did you cope?
I stayed in black I was mourning for 3 men at one time. And I was wearing black, and I was only 26 years young. And my mother chased me out of the black. She said, "Take it off. You're too young to be walking around looking like that." It was bad.
Can you tell me about your mother's passing?
My mother had bad high blood pressure, and she took sugar, diabetes, and everything. And she passed away. I was home on vacation, and she passed while I was there. The Presbyterian Church told me to stay there until I was finished with everything. And I was holding her hand. I'm a praying person, and I was holding her hand praying. I was so busy praying, I didn't know that she was gone already. But she passed away too. But I was there, and I took it a little bit better because I was looking for it. I felt it.
Being a single woman, did you date after your second marriage?
I certainly did.
A couple of them stand out with family and friends. The first is Brother Mapp. Can you tell us about your relationship with Brother Matt. How did you meet?
We met at the Baptist church. We were both on the usher board. And he started riding me home and everything. And he treated me very nice, and he treated my children nice. Very good. And he was a very good person. So that's how we met. And we went together for a long time.
What about Mr. Harris?
Mr. Harris, I met Mr. Harris. Mr. Harris was a neighbor of mine. His wife had a heart attack one day and passed away. And he was sitting on the bench. We had benches on each side of the building. And he was sitting there, and he waited till 2.5 years before he would talk to any woman around there about anything. And one day he called me and said, "Mrs. Yates, I want to talk with you. Can I come to your apartment?" And I said, "Oh, my God, what in the world is this now? Uh-oh." And I let him come up there, and we started going together. We had a very good relationship.
Also, Hector stands out because he was Hispanic. Tell us about that relationship.
Hector and I worked on the same job for the vocation agency. And we got together somehow. He started liking me, and he started sneaking on the bus to my house because we didn't want anybody to know we were going together, but he wasn't married. But anyway, he was very good. He was a very nice person, very laid back and all. Very nice.
Did you ever consider getting married a third time?
Well, I was thinking about it with Mr. Harris, but Mr. Harris got insanely jealous. He was a real dark man, very handsome and everything, but he was just too jealous. I couldn't stand that. It was overcrowded me.
Did you work as a young girl? I mean, if so, what was your first paid job?
Yes, I did. My first paid job was working, babysitting for 35 cents a week in my hometown in Rennes, Georgia.
Ooh. How about working in religious institution appears to have been a large part of your life. Could you share with us why?
Because I always was very religious myself, and that was the Presbyterian church was my choice. After working for ITT for 27.5 years, in between that I did housework when there was no work. But then I was hired at the Presbyterian church, and I worked there for 16 years. After the 16th year, I retired because the Presbyterian church moved to Louisville, Kentucky, and I didn't want to relocate. And I was hired. Reverend Ike was watching me. He needed somebody to pray on his prayer altar, and I went to a service, and he said, "Anybody you want prayed for, call that name out." My mother had told me my Uncle Gartrell, the doctor said in Augusta, Georgia, he had fallen out of a swing on his head and paralyzed him from his waist down. And the doctor said he would never walk again, the specialist. They put him in a nursing home. And my mother said, I said, "Well, what is Uncle Gartrell?" And she told me, he'll never walk again. And I said, when I got off the phone, I said, "No." I said, "That's not Uncle Gartrell. He was too active." And I went down, I left my children in the house and went down to the church and called out, "Gartrell Towers, Gartrell Towers, Gartrell Towers." That's for prayer. A week later, I called my mother and I said, "Mama, by the way, how's Uncle Gartrell?" She said, "Gartrell taking steps." And then she said, why? I said, what have you been up to? And then I told her. And Reverend Ike found out I had to do a big testimony. It's on record at our church in the archives now that my uncle was healed from that. And then that's why Reverend Ike said, anybody that don't have any better sense than to listen to me and do what I say do, and if somebody get healed, I want them on my prayer altar.
When did you realize you wanted to study the ministry?
I really was running. I was in the ministry studying. I studied with Dr. Raymond Charles Barker at First Church of Religious Science down at East 48th Street and 5th Avenue for 5 years. Reverend Knight's ministers didn't know anything about mind science. Reverend Knight went and studied himself. He hired a bunch of men and women to teach us, and I studied there for many years. And one day Reverend Knight called me from the prayer altar and said, Reverend Yates, Practitioner Yates, I'm going to ordain you for the work that you have done, you and 3 more. I said, okay, and that's what happened.
Wow. Let's talk about some fun things. Eastern Star. Tell us about this organization and your membership.
Eastern Star was a religious operation. It was something secret, something. We were sisters to the Masons. You know what a Mason is? It's something like that. You make signs, certain signs you make, and I know the sign, but I don't make it with anybody. And so we had wonderful things, wonderful programs and everything, and it was just a beautiful thing. We helped the community and everything. We raised funds and helped the community. I belonged to the House of the Amaranth, and all of those secret things I was in. But it was for the betterment of our race, especially.
All right, let's move on to. You're 90 years old. Tell us a little bit about your feelings regarding the invention of the television. And when did you get your first TV?
My feelings about the television. We got the first TV later up in the years, from 1950s. It was in the 1950s.
When you got your first
TV?
TV?
When I first got my first TV. Yes.
What'd you think about it?
I loved it. You couldn't tell me that I wasn't rich.
In 1969, Neil Armstrong was the first man to walk on the moon. What did you think about that?
I felt very proud because at that time I was working at ITT Laboratories in Clifton, New Jersey, and we did a lot of wiring and soldering for things like that. And whatever he went on, that thing that he went on, the thing that goes up in the air, we had a part in it. ITT had a part in it. I also had a part in putting the wiring and soldering for airplane, the wings on the airplanes.
Wow. How about, can you remember your first computer and how you felt about that?
I felt funny about it, but because a young man named Norman Folsom was working at the Presbyterian church where I was working, and he put me on a computer for the first time. I had taken some computer lessons, but I didn't know it too good, and I didn't want to do it, and I told him, I can't do this, and he said, Kathy Yates, you're going to work this thing. You're not going to get off. Stop acting like an old woman.
Well, I'm sure the microwave oven changed so much for you, too. Tell me, did you fear it like most people back in the 80s?
Yes, because I thought that we'd get radiation from it. But I got used to it, and I love it now.
Well, you look wonderful. Inquiring minds want to know, what is your beauty secret?
It's a hereditary thing from my mother. When she passed on, she looked like a young girl in the face. I have a habit of washing my face every night before I go to bed. And it has helped me, and thinking positive. After I left the Baptist church, I think positive about everything about my body. I found out really who made me. I understood it better. And he made me perfect, whole, and complete. And I get in the mirror and I bless myself every night before I go to bed. You sure look good to me, honey.
Kathryn, can you name some of your vacations that you've been on in the course of your life?
Yes. I went with Fred Price to Greece in the footsteps of Paul to Athens. I saw the Parthenon. We had to fly to Macedonia, where some big happenings from the Bible happened. I sailed the Aegean Sea, where Paul was shipwrecked. I went to the island of Patmos, where John the Revelator wrote the book of Revelations. And I saw the jail that the archaeologists dug up the whole place, dug up all the buildings, the ruins. I saw where Paul and Silas was bound in jail and all of that. And it was very good. And then the next place was the Holy Land. I will never be the same again. As I was baptized in the River Jordan, I will never forget that feeling. 2,500 of us dressed in white robes at that place. Then, and with Benny Hinn, we was at Benny Hinn, and we went with the Holy Land when I stood in the tomb where Jesus rose from the dead. I will never forget it. I will never be the same. And after that, we came out of the tomb and went on a hill and long benches and had service, sang the songs and praises of God.
Wow.
And it was awesome. And I've been on the SS Norway. That was my first cruise. I've been on 9 different cruises. And it was awesome.
Incredible. Any other places maybe that you would like to go at some point in time in your life?
To Europe, and Paris, and all of that.
Mm-hmm. Backing up just a little bit, when did you decide to move to Pennsylvania, and why?
Well, after living over 60 years in New York City, it started getting rough where I was living in the Bronx. And my granddaughter Sandra came and said, Grandma, she saw young people going in and out of the building with the door unlocked. She said, Grandma, we're going to have to get you out of here. She said, you could move in some of these new houses they're building for senior citizens, or you're welcome to come to Harrisburg. We'll find you something in Harrisburg. Immediately, I said, find me something in Harrisburg.
How has this change been for you? I mean, moving to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, after New York.
It has been wonderful. Harrisburg is smaller than New York. At this stage of my life, I don't need to live in a great big city like that. Everything is just wonderful. I live in a beautiful place by the Presbyterian Church. Even if I get sick or something happened to me here after working for the Presbyterian Church headquarters in New York City, the program agency wrote me and said, you will not, if you ever get where you can't pay your rent, we'll pay it.
Incredible. Tell me something. How did you feel when Obama won?
Oh, I was on cloud 9. I was on cloud 9. I was wonderful. And after I saw Jesse Jackson crying and Oprah Winfrey crying, I started crying for joy. It was a joyful time. It's history.
Well, for you, what would you consider to be your biggest challenge ever, and how did you overcome that challenge?
When my husband died, and I had left with 2 children, 2 babies to raise and everything, but thank God I had a good job right then. Most of the people around, especially people of color, they had clubs and things like that. They had clubs made in the clubs of the bars and things, and then we had a lot of dance halls all over New York.
So everybody kind of made their own entertainment.
Yeah, well, we just organized the club like the rest of the people in Harlem.
How about that?
Yeah.
How long did you have that club?
About 10 or 15 years.
Wow.
Yeah, we did it. The Carlton Terrace is a very beautiful place downtown. I don't know whether it's there now or not. We had Carlton Terrace all the time. And we had the Knights of Caldwell. It was another set of fellows from my hometown called the Knights of Caldwell Avenue.
Oh, okay. How
and
about
we
that?
had a good time. All those people were from my hometown, from Rennes, the old town of Rennes.
Really?
And we had a ball.
Oh, my
I
goodness.
dressed every Saturday. If Helen didn't have the money, I'd buy her one, too. We'd buy.
So y'all partied every weekend somewhere?
Yeah, we partied every weekend, and the Knights of Caldwell would have their party, their dance, all in the Bronx. I forgot where that thing is.
How about that?
And we just had a ball. We just had a ball.
Oh, that's good. That's good.